If you followed the channel for a minute, you'll know I have a pretty good pre-release record, but it's not a stellar record. Time and time again, I'm constantly on the cusp of the EXO, only to be knocked out by some grade A bona fide bullshit. Those 1 or 2 losses just hang off the side like a pair of truck nuts unwillingly welded to my bumper. The deck that's been giving me nothing but sweet whispers and finding outs like a Mugimoto suddenly crumbles to pieces. The bombs that autopilot themselves into my hand, for whatever reason there's just one game where they get lost in the parking lot. But today for the Aetherdrift Prerelease, I think I have just the place where we'll finally get that perfect record. Not gigabytes, but just up the highway where I helped Caleb cast the Illustrials event a couple weeks ago, Cards HQ. Now what's in my favor here? Connections and competition. Well, I guess more a lack thereof for that last one. Nick is a good friend of mine who's running the show, and I know will give me the best pre-release kit. As for the competition, well, Cards HQ is still pretty new to the TCG scene in the area. Up until recently, they've been mostly a collector store. And since it's a Friday night, all the big players are going to the more established shops. Level Up, Gigabytes, Wasteland. I'm not saying it'll be a cakewalk, but I have an educated guess the competition won't be nearly as cutthroat. So let's cut to that opening, see what we can put together, and just like we drew it up. The Aether Spark, alright, cool. Oh, I don't know, I don't know if it'll be that good. We'll see. The Aether Spark, the literal MacGuffin the world is racing for in this set, in our hands like a gift from God. Nick, you beautiful bastard, I knew you'd hand me the sauce. And as we're going through the opening, a few things stand out to me. Getting the black-white Verge means we might be able to do a repeat of Foundations and play some Orzhov. It continues to look like the lane I can stay in. The uncommon revival vehicle, some decent low end with a Death Touch Rat, and good top end with the Sloth makes me feel like this is the way. Up until I see we pulled not 1, but 2 lumbering World Wagons to give a viable excuse to bleed into green, and then we pull him. This is a regular. Roadside Assistance, Apocalypse Runner, Momentum Breaker, Sky Serpent Seeker, Mimeoplasm Revered One. Alright, I don't know if that's gonna be something I'm gonna play, but we'll figure it. The Mimeoplasm. Now, the usability of the new Mimeoplasm is almost entirely based on the quality of creatures in your deck. Since he can become whatever he exiles, you need to actually have things worth transforming into. And I'm noticing a distinct lack of even decent creatures. But seeing the World Wagons and this tortoise that makes treasures, God, it's like I can hear him whispering to me like the Green Goblin mask.
Hey, 4-color Josh. What's there to lose?
No, I need to be a responsible deck builder. The top prize at stake is a free collector pack. Why would I throw away my shot at that? I can't be that flexible. Well, we did pull a green and blue duel, even though it enters tapped. And I guess if we're already playing green, what's the harm in splashing for blue? I mean, we even have a decent Death Touch in the air, and a 4/4 flying vehicle that can make Thopters. And the Aether Spark can just make the mana I need if I don't need to draw cards. I mean, wait, our pre-release promo is Cursed Cloth Wrappings, which would just be the late game for the Orzhov deck. Ha! You won't woo me to the dark side today, you pile of pus and bones.
Interesting observation. But pray tell, weren't you gifted this entry? I mean, what's the harm in a little fun?
Fine, I'll consider it, but don't think you've won yet, you Nickelodeon reject. So I start looking through what we pulled, setting aside the rares and removal, and really trying to put together a straight Orzhov list, because I don't want to fall into the trap of too many colors. But I really start thinking on it, and kind of get stuck for a while, because realistically, the removal we got is just bad. A bounce spell in the blue shell from blue, some fight spells, and the white flavor of fight spells, which is more gang up on one guy in particular. So ultimately, we're relying pretty heavily on our creatures and combat tricks. Of course, the wagon is stellar. At the floor, it gets a land search, and as long as we can crew it, we can get even more mana out of it. And dipping into green too gives us those fight spells that combine pretty solidly with the Death Touch Rats and the Flying Snake. Unfortunately, as much as I try to fight it, the logic is kind of sound. A few dual lands, the Treasure Tortoise, and the wagon ramp set me down a very slimy and gooey path. And probably the biggest part of we're dipping into this many colors, the Curse Cloth wrappings are the only card that has a double pip mana requirement. Everything else just needs one color we can access pretty easily. Despite my best attempts to thwart it, that gelatinous asshole wormed his way into the list, which, as you can see here, is still pretty suspect. I couldn't figure out a good way to cut down to 40, so I'm coping with the fact that with the draw spells and the wagon land tutors, this can work itself out in the long run. Death Touch Rats and the Flying Snake are very good early game blockers. The turtle itself is a surprisingly good blocker and mechanism to crew vehicles, and even if our creatures die, they're just an exile effect away from coming back by way of the wrappings or Mimeoplasm. The goal is going to be ideally sticking an Aether Spark to start massive draws, exhausting the Worm to trample through to the finish, or having Mimeoplasm transform into something with evasion that can push through for the win.
Yes. Feel the slime coursing through you.
Okay, you chill right out, you're making it weird. But before we talk about the games, take a moment to do 3 things for me, would ya? Subscribe if you haven't. Obviously, you don't want to miss out on the future funny moments and amazing Spellify Zero guessers. Check out the affiliate links for Ultra Pro and Nerd Gear for 5% off your next Magic accessory order. If you're going to buy sleeves, playmats, or Commander accoutrement, why not save some money and support your favorite creator in the process? And finally, check out my Discord where I like to get more people into so we can run more community events. But anyway, let's get back to how I win this pre-release. So round 1 is up against Ben on Boros. Game 1, we find ourselves on the party wagon, but get repeatedly bonked by the Lean and Surveyor because for some reason it just gets to have first strike. Okay, fine. But with a handful of corpses, the Mimeoplasm is able to arise, become a Sky Seeker, and start slamming in for massive damage in the air. Game 2 is a bit of the same. I'm being beaten up by the same Catboy and the Ox, draw a few times with the black draw spells, and manage to stick the Aether Spark onto a massive wagon that demands being blocked. We get in for 10 on one swing, and next turn can clear for a game with some combat tricks and the giant worm from Dune. So round 1 goes with a pretty swift 2-0. Round 2 is against Zach on Golgari. I don't have as many notes here, but basically nothing too crazy either game. Game 1 was very much slam the wagon and start beating down with an ever-shortening clock due to its attack gain based on lands. Game 2, we didn't see the wagon, instead relying on the bevy of smaller creatures like the Sky Seeker and the rats to get through on the ground over multiple turns. A side note, since there wasn't much from the game to talk about and since I'd asked the people that beat me in the early rounds their thoughts on my deck, I try to give some deck building advice post-game to whoever I play with. And I think it was Zach that after going through his pool, had a super sick Azorius list that I encouraged him to try. Mostly because he had a Riptide Gearhulk as his promo and he just didn't have enough experience in Limited before to take the plunge. But somebody's gotta get these people out of their comfort zones. No, not you, Mimeoplasm. You gotta be put on a watch list. And moving on to round 3, I can almost taste the copious amounts of foiling my collector's booster. Oh, the chances for fractured foils and full arts. I can feel the incoming aluminum coursing through my veins. Unfortunately, I was stopped dead in my tracks by Connor in round 3. To start game 1, I take my first hand. A bunch of 4-drops and 2 lands. I don't feel comfortable enough with that, and then I find the second hand with even fewer lands. Finally, a Mold of 5 gets me a semi-playable hand, only to see the snake is my only creature the whole game as I'm rushed down by Jeskai vehicles. Alright. Fine, we'll take this to a game 3. It won't be that easy, I guess. No, we won't, because he swaps to a Golgari Vehicles deck helmed by the nastiest 3-drop I think I've ever seen. The Thunder's Velocipede is a 5/5 with trample that makes small guys bigger and bigger guys fucking massive. And somehow, once again, even with a full grip of 7, the only creature I can find is the faithful Sky Seeker. I even managed to find the wagon, but it's just not enough. The futile attempt to block is met with the same black combat trick that won me round 1, and I have zero way to get back into the game after the Velocipede tramples over it. Once again, I find myself on the edge of victory only to be snatched away by nonsense. Would a plain Jane Orzhov list have gotten me over the finish line? Maybe, but maybe not. Parallel universes and all that. And if it's any consolation prize, the collector's pack wasn't even that great. But it's about what that win means, you know? Finally overcoming the impossible to make it all the way. But alas, I guess we'll just wait for the next one. But hey, Ben won his round with the Azorius pile. So that means clearly my loss was just Lady Luck screwing me over. As for my brief thoughts on the set, the big thing that stood out to me was the quality of general creature that felt much lower than usual. And a lower number than usual too. It was like everyone had a used car lot and no buyers. If you play more of this format, just be careful to actually have enough pilots to sit down at the captain's chair. But let me know down below in the comments how your pre-releases went. Thanks again for watching, check out the links in the description, and remember, always hold up some mana for the Mimeoplasm.